Thank you, everyone. So I can't remember if I had mentioned this to most of you the last time I was here, but it's something that I like to mention so you know where I'm coming from. Even though I do have a professional background in this topic, and this is all I do. I go to families' homes, I help with different challenging situations that they encounter with their family member with dementia. I also have a personal connection to dementia as well. This is my mom and my grandmother. This is Norma Dail, and Norma and both of her siblings passed away from dementia. Their maiden name was Dail, so that's why I named my practice Day by Day Home Therapy. But I do understand from the personal end of things, at least to some degree, what some of you are going through at home. So hopefully I can bring both the professional and the personal end of things to the presentation. As always, if you guys have questions, please feel free to jump in. We can make this casual, more of a discussion. I just want to make sure that you all get from this whatever you hope to get from it. So who all is in the room with me today? Do I have family caregivers? Can you raise your hands? Great. Any friends or formal caregivers? Any formal caregivers in the room? That would probably be the key. A formal caregiver meaning a professional caregiver.
Yeah. You run by, I missed what you said.
Oh, sorry, Vicki. Perfect. Anybody else who I didn't touch on today? Anyone else? Okay, thank you. I am
Rachel. Can I just make one
Of course.
super quick announcement?
Yeah.
We have the windows open because we don't have AC on yet in here, so it's gonna be, we're gonna hear that trolley and other noises, so just so you know, if we close the windows, it'll get really hot in here. And the other quick announcement is bathrooms. There is a men's room, when you go out this way, the men's room is all the way down the hall to the left, and there's a ladies' room right down this hallway to the left. Sorry.
No, that's
sorry,
okay.
Rachel. Okay.
And can you all hear me okay? Is this volume all right? Okay, people in the back, if you at any point can't hear me, just wave and let me know. Okay. I have a few objectives here today. After the last presentation, I chatted with Felicia and Allison briefly about how I could best structure today's presentation. A lot of the concepts from the last time I was here about activity engagement will also apply to activities of daily living. So today I'm taking a slightly different approach, and I'm focusing more on the common challenges associated with bathing and dressing and grooming. So these are our objectives today. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to identify what we call dementia-related behaviors that impact activities of daily living, identify the triggers related to those behaviors, understand the impact that the environment has on people engaging in ADLs, also understanding communication strategies and the impact that that has, identifying strategies that will decrease those challenges, and then being able to apply those concepts to your real life situation. So if any of you are comfortable sharing, what do you hope to learn today? What are you hoping to get out of this? Yeah.
How to make bath time more easy. Right now it's a fight and it's a struggle.
Absolutely. So right now, bath time is a fight and a struggle, and you're looking for some strategies to make that easier.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
What's going on in their mind that's creating these kinds of behaviors to understand their reality?
Absolutely. So wanting to understand their reality and understand why they have these types of behaviors. Great.
Best ways to help with hygiene related tasks that won't make an upset but will be actually looked forward to or something like that.
Absolutely. So the best way to set up different activities so that it won't be a traumatic or negative experience, but rather a positive one. Great. Yeah.
How do you know when to start interceding in their daily activities?
That's a really good point. So how do you know when to start assisting with daily activities? Great. So that's something that I don't have a strong focus on in this presentation, but it is absolutely something that I can talk about. So if at any point you feel like it would be appropriate to jump in with that question again, or if at the end I haven't answered it, make sure that you come talk to me, because I would like to address that. Thank you. Anybody else?
I was just going to say, how do you empower them to want to go get washed?
Okay, so
Because if they're independent already and they can do it on their own, but you're noticing that things are 3 days that they're wearing the same clothes.
okay,
So
that's a great
how do you empower them
point.
to do this without embarrassing them?
Okay, so thinking about their dignity, not
Right.
trying to embarrass them, but recognizing that they might be physically independent in these tasks, but they're not remembering to do the tasks
Exactly.
on a regular basis.
Mhm.
Right. We will try our best to touch on as many of these things as we can today. A lot of what I'll be talking about is a framework that can apply to various behaviors. So that way we can hopefully address as many of your unique situations as possible in the time frame that we have. Okay. All right. So when I say activities of daily living, we're going to focus on bathing, dressing, grooming, but just so that you know, we do have other things that are incorporated into activities of daily living. Those things include toileting and toilet hygiene, which I know is another very big issue that comes up. Swallowing and eating, feeding, functional mobility, personal device care, personal hygiene and grooming, sexual activity. They are all what occupational therapists consider activities of daily living. So just so that you know, we don't have to touch on all of these today, but just so that you're aware, if you are ever working with an occupational therapist, these things all qualify as ADLs. I have rest and sleep down here. Rest and sleep is its own category of what we call occupation, which are activities that we do. So rest and sleep is also something that can be addressed with this model. I just didn't want to leave that out because that's another big one. Waking at night, difficulty with sleeping comes up quite often. Okay. Questions about this? All right. So here I have some common challenges that come up when caring for someone with dementia. So the person does not initiate or start the activity independently, meaning that they need reminders. They're not doing it completely on their own. Other issues are that they require physical assistance during the activity. They might resist engaging in the activity when we provide them, with that cue or reminder. And then also safety issues come up. Some examples are, my mom refuses to get a shower, my wife won't change her clothes, or my husband forgets to brush his teeth. These are common types of things that I hear from the families who I work with. So when we think about these challenges, the first thing that we need to do is identify the problem, which might sound kind of simple, but it's actually a little bit more detailed than just saying, aggression or just saying resistance. I really want to know the details behind that behavior. So, what is the challenge or behavior? Describe in detail, and why is this a problem? I am going to have you all do this on your worksheet in a moment. I would like for you to think about an activity of daily living, an ADL, that's currently a challenge for you and your family member. And I want you to say, what is the challenge? So first I want you to say, the challenge is bathing, for example. Describe the challenge in detail. So my wife resists getting getting a shower when I ask her if she wants to shower. Or my wife says no when I say it's time to get a shower. My wife pushes me away when I try to get her into the shower. Does that make sense? So I'm asking for a little bit more detail. So I'm going to have you do this now. I'm going to have you write down what is the area that's a challenge. So I'm going to have each of you pick just one for the sake of today. So think about one activity of daily living that's currently a challenge. You're going to write that down. Describe the challenge in detail. And then I also want you to think about, why is this a problem? Might seem kind of straightforward, but I want you to try to write that down too. So take a few minutes and fill that out, and then we'll regroup. I know I didn't think this was a pen. Oh, and I could have mentioned, sorry everyone. You have this packet in front of you, but you also have a worksheet that has those questions on it. You can write it in either location. When I say, why is this a problem, I'm looking for something like, it's a problem because it's a hygiene issue. It's a problem because, I don't want them to sit in wet Depends because it's a risk for a urinary tract infection, something like that. So I just want to know why it's a problem so that we can get a better sense of how we want to fix it, why we want to fix it. Yes.
Are you waiting for a response?
Oh, I was just giving people a few minutes, but I would love to hear your response.
This is a social problem.
A social problem. Okay.
A lot of things are social problems, actually, now that I think about it.
Absolutely. So,
Now, the next thing I'm to tell you is, that's the problem, a social problem.
it's a social problem. And what is the challenge or behavior? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Denture.
Okay.
He has refused to get a new denture so that doesn't fit well.
Okay, so his dentures don't fit well.
Right. And,
Okay.
he's had it for a long time, refuses to replace it. And he takes it out in public.
Okay.
Now, fortunately, we're pretty much good friends who are okay. By the way, my mother-in-law, his mother, had dementia, and she used to do that too.
Okay.
And I didn't think anything of it, but with my husband, I'm more
Aware of the impact, right? So your husband is taking his dentures out in a social situation.
Because he needs to take out the food that's in the lodge
Because it doesn't fit. That makes sense. Okay, so dentures are coming out because food is blocking and because his dentures aren't fitting well.
With a napkin or a handkerchief or something, yeah.
Right, okay. Thank you for sharing that. That's exactly what we're talking about. So the challenge or behavior would be spitting out the dentures. Describing in a little bit more detail would be the dentures don't fit, so food is getting caught, so the dentures come out. And then why is this a problem? It's an issue mostly in social situations because he's popping his dentures out in public. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Anybody else have something they are willing to share?
Pill taking.
Pill taking, good.
So sometimes my mother just refuses to take the pill, or she'll spit it out, throw it away, or hide it.
Okay.
And then when she does take it, she rarely will swallow a pill now. She chews them.
Okay.
So I checked with the pharmacist, and they said as long as they're not time release, it's okay. So she chews everything.
Okay.
And it's a problem because she needs the medication for, it's just one little pill, hypertension.
Okay.
And then I give her half a Trazodone for her anxiety.
Okay. So the challenge or behavior would be resisting taking medication or chewing medicine, not swallowing it. So not taking her medication as prescribed necessarily. Describing in detail, that would be the details about how she tries to chew it or she spits it out. And then why is this a problem? It's a problem because it's medication and it's for health-related issues. Right. Thank you. That's great.
Probably because she'll have a stroke.
Right. Absolutely. That could be a potential issue too. Does everyone feel okay with what they wrote down? Does this concept make sense so far? Just kind of laying the groundwork for what it is that you're going to work on as we talk today. Okay, so common challenges that I see. Again, I have a focus on these slides on dressing, bathing, and grooming, but this theory or model that I'm going to be talking about today will apply to any of these concerns that you have mentioned. So we have common challenges. So these are common things that I hear from the families with whom I work. The person with dementia doesn't initiate dressing. They don't dress independently. They dress in inappropriate clothing. They stand while completing lower body dressing, so safety issue. They're trying to pull their pants on while they're standing up. They resist changing their clothing. For bathing, I hear things like they don't initiate, they don't bathe independently or thoroughly. So you can see a common theme here of independence, initiation. Bathing, they might be at risk for falling, so again, a safety concern, or resisting bathing. And then the next slide has just a few more common challenges. So not initiating grooming, doesn't groom independently, not safe while using the razor, resisting grooming. Incontinent, doesn't sit while toileting, requires assistance for toileting, or resists assistance during toileting. Everything you all mentioned, they are also appropriate answers for this activity. These are just the most common ones that I see as it relates to these 4 categories. Okay, I have a few others on here, just more examples of common challenges. So now that we've kind of laid the groundwork, we have step 1, we've identified what the issue is. Now we have to figure out, why is this an issue? This is the hardest part of the process, but also if we can spend time to figure out why it's a problem, we can find strategies to help address that trigger. So we spend quite a bit of time on this portion. Okay, why do behaviors occur? So we have this model called the Triadic Model. There are many different models out there that help to explain why behaviors occur. They all have research to support them. They are all valuable. I'm partial to this model because it's connected to the research that I implement on a regular basis. So some research by Dr. Gitlin. It says that we have a behavior or a challenge, and that behavior or challenge is happening because there is a trigger within one of 3 different categories. One is a trigger within the caregiver. So something that the caregiver said or did that may be contributing to the behavior. We also have triggers within the person with dementia, their internal state. So that could be something like an unmet need, pain or discomfort, or a medical condition. I'm going to give you a lot more examples of all of these in a moment. And then we have things that could be triggering the behavior within the environment. So noise, lighting, odors, stimulation, and temperature. Again, this is a very general summary, but this is the model we're going to use to help figure out why these different things are a concern. So I'm going to talk about each of these categories in a little bit more detail. So when I talk about triggers that are happening within the caregiver, I'm talking a lot about communication style. So things that we might do unintentionally that might bring on a behavior might be asking open-ended or abstract questions. Something like, what would you like to eat today? It sounds harmless, but it's a very complex question that could put a lot of pressure on the person with dementia. So it could create some anxiety or a potential behavior. Providing them with too many choices, using complex statements, or multiple directions at one time. So if we try to say a couple steps at once, again, that's a lot for someone with dementia to try to process. So that could unintentionally trigger a behavior. If we're yelling or have a negative tone, if we're stressed and we don't recognize maybe that our stress is coming through in our body language or in our tone of voice, that could potentially bring on a behavior. Crossed arms, so again, body language, blaming the person with dementia. And then also just the way that we implement a daily routine. So expecting the person with dementia to do more than what they're capable of. expecting them to break down the tasks on their own versus us breaking it down for them. Possibly rushing someone, right? It's the morning, we have to get out, we have to get to the doctor's appointment, we have to get to the day program, we have to go. Usually rushing actually increases that resistance, right? Have any of you experienced that? Once in a while? Okay. And then stress. So again, our stress could come through in our body language or tone of voice. Any questions about this? Are you guys with me? I'm going to talk through the next two categories and then we're going to pull it all together. So triggers that could be happening within the person with dementia. We have internal factors. So we call these unmet needs, right? That is the need to use the bathroom, or they're hungry or they're thirsty and they can't express it. So then they could have a behavioral response. They could also have a sense of loss of control, right? I used to be able to do this task for myself. I can't anymore. I can't express that. And so it might come across as a behavior. Not understanding what we're supposed to do. I'm talking as if I'm the person with dementia. So if the person doesn't understand what they're supposed to do, they're fearful, they're tired, all of these things are happening within them. It's an internal state that could trigger a behavior. Also pain, being too hot or too cold, being sensitive to water, either temperature or the feeling of water, invasion of personal space, and then also thinking about changes in their abilities, their visual perceptual skills, their balance, their hearing, their vision, difficulty initiating and sequencing tasks. So all of these things could be happening within the person with dementia that could trigger a behavior. Does this all make sense? Any questions about this side?
Maybe I didn't hear it, but under or overstimulated?
So under or overstimulated. So bless you. That could be, this is where this triadic model where we have 3 different categories, they kind of all impact each other. So being under or overstimulated is this idea that we have a lot going on in the environment or we have nothing going on in the environment. And that makes someone feel either overstimulated because they're trying to process all of these things happening in their environment, or they're understimulated because there's nothing for them to do in their environment. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Does that make sense to everyone in here? Am I going through this too fast? No, okay. All right, and then we have different medical concerns. So medical concerns might be things that we can't change. So something like arthritis or COPD or cardiovascular disease, we can't change those things, but we want to know if it's a contributing factor. We also have medical concerns that we can change. So something like pain. We can potentially, depending on, if the physician's prescribed pain medication, we might be able to address pain. It might be that there's a medication side effect or a medication interaction. A urinary tract infection. Has anyone in here had a family member who had a UTI? And then did you see an increase in behaviors? Or a change in their level of agitation? So that can be a really big factor or a big trigger to a behavior. Other things like depression, anxiety, and dehydration. So all of these things could be contributing. I know there are a lot of possibilities right now, but we're going to try to figure out in a couple minutes which ones pertain to your family member. Okay. Any questions about this slide? All right, and then we have the third area of this model, which is the physical environment or social environment. So we have noise, the television being on in the background, the radio being on, people talking. All of those things might be happening in the environment that are contributing to a behavior. They might feel overstimulated because of what's going on in the background, where maybe you and I can tune that kind of thing out, but somebody with dementia is trying to process all of this information at once and they're overwhelmed. We also want to think about the safety, and that impact on behavior and on someone's ability to do a task. And then also items or people in the environment. So are there too few items for engagement? So again, the person doesn't have anything to do, so therefore they're bored, and then we have a behavior. Or maybe there are things in the environment, but they're not appropriate items. So they're things that create a safety risk, or things that they can't engage in because they're too complex or too difficult. Maybe the items needed for the task aren't in view. So somebody is trying to brush their teeth, but the toothbrush and the toothpaste are in the cabinet, or in the, the drawer, whatever it might be. People with dementia engage with what they can see in their environment. So if it's out of their visual field, it's going to be very, very challenging for them to initiate a task. Also things like clutter, too many people being in the room, different strong smells, or really intense temperatures, so being too cold or too hot, and the lighting. These things can all contribute to behaviors. Any questions about any of this?
I just want to pass along something back on your previous slide with the medical situation. We just found out that one of our mother's drugs is actually countering the drug for the dementia. So people should really look closely at what your loved ones are taking, because it was like, why didn't they pick this up right from the beginning? It's a basic thing.
Right. So
she was taking Detrol for a bladder situation, which works against the drug for the dementia.
So your family member, just to recap, your family member is taking a medication that you later found out was negating the benefits of another medication for the dementia. That's a good point, and I think medication side effects and interactions, it's not something that we commonly think of offhand when we're trying to come up with triggers to behaviors, but it's definitely something we want to discuss with the physician. When we try to come up with what possible triggers to behaviors are, I try to list as many possibilities as I can think of, and then I'm going to pull out some of them that I might not know the answer to, but I'm going to ask the family to ask the physician about it. So anything with medications, that's going to be something where we're going to ask the doctor, do these medications have any sort of interaction? Do they have side effects that could be triggering the behaviors that we're seeing? Great point. Yeah.
Just to follow up on that, my mother recently got that rhinovirus that was going around from a family member. She kept checking on them, and I'd be like, no. And then I'd find out in the middle of the night she's in the room. And I was like, oh. So she got it and went to the hospital. They were in bed for a whole week with a fever. I said I didn't think she could do a fever for a whole week. So I took her to the emergency room. They kept her, and they said hers that quickly had turned into pneumonia. But they went through a total review of her medication list.
Yeah.
And the doctor said one of the medications that she had been taking for years for anxiety, it also was hindering her memory medication.
Okay.
And I actually was glad that she was in the hospital to stop taking it, because she had been taking it for years, and I was fearful for her. And she's actually she's clearer without it, for a good portion of the day. And she looks like herself, and she talks like herself. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, we thought this was helping, and it wasn't.
Right. It's very, it's very challenging to know which medications are having a really positive effect and which aren't. So this is definitely a conversation worth having with the doctors, just to make sure, that all of the medications are appropriate, and that there's no interactions or negative consequences from anything that they're on. One example, I had I had multiple clients on my caseload recently who all came to me for waking at night, and I'll share all of them in a minute. They all had different triggers, different causes for the behavior, but one of which was a side effect from a beta blocker that caused insomnia. So that took some problem solving with the family to figure out, we kind of had to rule out everything else. And once we ruled out a lot of other possible triggers, that's when we said, okay, we need to go to the doctor and think about what medicine this person is on. And sure enough, with the family advocating, they were able to identify that it was a side effect. So it's not something that we can usually pinpoint really easily at first, but it's usually a process of trial and error. If we can rule out all of these other triggers, we might be able to then have an easier conversation with the doctor. Thank you for sharing that. Great. Any other questions or comments about the possible triggers? I'm going to give you examples of all of these now. Hopefully this will make more sense. Okay, so I'm using this example of resisting bathing. And now what we're going to do is, as a group, I want to identify what triggers are happening from or within the caregiver that could be triggering resisting bathing. Then we're going to talk through triggers within the person with dementia that could cause resisting bathing, and triggers within the environment that could cause resisting bathing. Okay? So first we're going to focus on the caregiver. Just thinking about that slide that we talked about in terms of tone of voice, body language, words that we use, what do you think the caregiver may have done that may have triggered a resistance to bathing?
Trying to rush them.
Trying to rush them. Good. Rushing the task. Good. What else?
Tone of voice.
Tone of voice. So possibly a negative tone of voice might have set the person up to already be resistant, right? If we come in and say, okay, time to get a shower, we're already like, no, not going to do that. Okay. What else?
Personal space.
Personal space. Great point, Vicki. So not giving the person with dementia their personal space, not making them feel secure. Good. What else? Any other ideas?
Temperature of the water?
Temperature of the water. That's a really good point. I think I'm going to categorize that one into environment, but that's absolutely a trigger. What else might the caregiver have said? Yeah.
How about not realizing they're not able to do it? You think they can, but they really can't.
Absolutely.
We haven't got our own minds around that.
Right. That's a really good point. So having our expectations set a little bit too high, right? So maybe thinking that the person with dementia is capable of bathing themselves, but maybe they're not actually able to do that. Were you going to say something?
I think imposing my own personal standards of hygiene on my mother. So now at this point, she's probably showering every other day,
Right.
which is definitely sufficient.
Absolutely. That's a great point. So our own expectations about what is hygienic, right? Maybe we all shower every day, and so we expect our family member to do the same. When in reality, maybe it's okay if they shower every other day or once a week, right? As long as they're safe and they're healthy and their hygiene is okay, then that's where I say relax the rules, right? We're going to change our expectations to be reasonable. I worked with a caregiver one time who said she was very frustrated because her husband used to wash his face with the washcloth and then his body. But now he's washing his body and then his face. And she didn't like that the washcloth was on his body and then his face. I said, you know what? That's one where we're going to say, we're going to relax the rules. If there's soap on the washcloth, he's still getting clean, I'm okay with it, right? We're going to just change our expectations. Or maybe we take that washcloth and give him a new one, right? If that's something that's more closer to your standards or what you would prefer. That's okay with me too. All right? Okay. So for me, a really, really big trigger that most people don't think about is the word shower. So if you think about your family member and you say, okay, it's time to get a shower, oftentimes doesn't that phrase initiate the resistance? Maybe not. But for a lot of people that I work with, they'll tell me, well, it's when I say to my mom, it's time to get a shower, or today's shower day, time to get washed. That's when the resistance starts. So for me, I want to know that because I'm thinking, okay, how did we say that? What was it that we said that triggered the resistance? So if the word shower is a trigger, then we have to adapt our communication approach. We can talk more about strategies a little later, but while I'm on this topic, I usually say something like, let's take a walk. And we end up in the bathroom that's already nice and warm and the water's already running. And then we can decrease resistance. So nothing that I'm going to talk about today is going to work 100% of the time, but if it helps at all, it's still worth a try. So think about, is there a specific word or a specific phrase that you're using that's actually the trigger to the resistance. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. You guys, I think, hit on most of these. Said the word shower. It's a really big one. If we're stressed, we're not necessarily breaking down a task. We gave too many steps at one time, or we changed the routine, right? Most of you are family caregivers, you know your family members pretty well. This is more of an issue if I work with, say, staff at a community where maybe they're implementing showering routine in the morning, but the person with dementia used to shower at night, right? So we want to be aware of what's a routine for that person, what's been important to them, and trying not to shift the routine too drastically. Okay. How about triggers within the person with dementia? What's going on within them that could trigger a resistance to bathing?
Maybe the water was too hot the last time.
Absolutely. So if the water was too hot the last time, maybe they're afraid, right? They were uncomfortable before, so now they're afraid this time. Just the idea of being too hot or too cold, right? Being too cold is a very, very common trigger for resistance to bathing. Good. What else might be going on within that person? So we have fear, temperature.
Just putting together the whole routine, the pattern of multiple tasks, like
Absolutely.
soaping, washing their hair.
Right. They're confused about what they're supposed to do because the task itself is too complex. There's too many steps involved. Perfect. Anything else? Pain, discomfort, kind of connected to what Vicki said before, the caregiver might not be giving personal space. The person with dementia might feel that their personal space is being invaded. They're feeling insecure, they're exposed, they're embarrassed, right? All of a sudden they've been doing showering by themselves for their whole life, and now there's someone in the room with them to help them with showering while they're exposed. That can be a really uncomfortable situation. Does anyone think that that might be a factor for their family member? Maybe? Yeah.
For that embarrassment thing, have you ever seen anybody making them wear their bathing suit into the thing so they don't feel embarrassed? Does that ever happen?
That's a good question. So wearing a bathing suit. So that, I like where your head's at, because what you're doing is you're taking a trigger, which could be that invasion of privacy or embarrassment, and you're connecting a strategy to the trigger. So your strategy in this case is trying a bathing suit. I think, it would be probably one extra step that might be a little bit more challenging to switch into that. But I absolutely have done like wrapping towels around people under their clothing so that when they take their shirt off, they still have that nice warm towel around them, and then wearing the towel into the shower. So the same concept, but if a bathing suit's easy to get on and off, by all means, because that's addressing that trigger.
Or their underwear.
Yeah, or their underwear. I mean, at the end of the day, as long as we can somehow get them clean, if we can get them into the shower and they're wearing their underwear, maybe once it's wet and on them, they might want to take it off. So I think that's absolutely okay. Yeah. Great idea. Any other thoughts on what triggers might be within the person with dementia? All right, I'll share some of my thoughts. So just so that you know, this is not an all-inclusive list, it's just a few ideas. So the person with dementia doesn't remember the importance of bathing or how to bathe. Again, their memory is impaired, right? So they might think that they just got a shower this morning. I hear that a lot from families that they'll say, well, I try to get my mom to shower, and she'll say, I already took one. I just got one this morning. They're like, no, it's been a couple weeks at this point, right? The person with dementia doesn't like being wet or being cold. They feel an invasion of their personal space, loss of privacy or independence. They have an increased sensitivity to water temperature or pressure. A lot of people with dementia perceive water as painful. So we want to keep that in mind. Feeling fearful, tired, anxious, insecure, paranoid, any of these things could be happening that could create this resistance. All right, and then how about the physical or social environment? So we got one, maybe it's too cold or too hot. the water temperature, the room temperature. What else could be going on?
Fear of falling, getting in the phone.
Fear of falling, absolutely. That could even be connected. That's why I kind of have the arrows going here, right? This not being a safe environment could contribute to someone's fear. Absolutely. What else?
I think the availability of what you need to perform that task. So lately what I've done to encourage my mother, and it helps, I put a little, what do you call it, a little mat on the floor so she'll step onto that after when she's wet.
Right.
I'll put out her towel, her washcloth, and make sure the soap is there. So like everything that I would just take for granted of putting together in the shower mat, you know, I do all of that. So the entire environment for showering is already prepared for her.
Perfect, perfect. So for somebody who resists bathing or has difficulty with bathing, it might be because those items are not in their visual field. They're behind a cabinet. They're in a closet. They're not out for someone to see, so they don't recognize that they're items that they need. Or it doesn't help to initiate their task. So that's a great example. You placing these objects within view not only makes it easier for her to use them, it likely helps to initiate that task, right? Great example. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so a couple of the things that I was thinking: temperature, too much stimulation, and safety concerns. By too much stimulation, and when I say like overstimulation within the person, I think about the families I work with who will, they'll say, oh, there's resistance to bathing. So a lot of times I'll say, okay, can I come and watch? So I might come into the home and I see that for one particular client I can think of, the husband would kind of pull the covers off of his wife. She's already resistant. She's like, no, trying to pull the covers back over her. He's like, nope, time to go to the shower, right? So he picks her up, walks her to the bathroom. She's resistant when it comes to taking the clothes off. She's fighting getting the clothes off. There's bright lights. There's a caregiver also trying to help the situation. So there's a few people in there. They have the TV on in the background. And in this situation, they were speaking a couple different languages, which is perfectly okay depending on, what's best for that client. But in this situation, that was overstimulation, right? There's a lot going on. Not only is there's different sounds, there's bright lights, there's different smells, there's different noises, there's multiple people. That's a very, very overstimulating environment. So we've set it up with a lot of chaos. The other thing that I think about is, if we're going to talk about resisting bathing in that scenario, we have to backtrack and talk about the resistance to getting out of bed. Because to engage in a task like bathing, when we've already experienced resistance to other tasks right before bathing, that person's already anxious and agitated from the other scenarios that they've experienced. Does that make sense? So we want to address the other two issues before we're going to address bathing, because we want to set the person up to be in a calm, comfortable mood and environment before we start bathing. All right. So that's what I mean when I say too much stimulation. Yeah.
I wonder how much time between first chaos, then maybe you need a timeout. So how much time do you think is good before they are ready to take a shower or bath or something?
That's a very, very good question. So Vicky's asking, how much time does someone need between one activity before we start another activity? How much time is needed to kind of relax and take a break before we try something else? I wish I had a specific answer for you, but it's very person specific. Some people might need 5 minutes, other people might need a half an hour, right? So it really is going to depend on that person, and it's going to depend on their short-term memory, to be honest. Some people who have short-term memory that's not as impaired, they're going to need a longer amount of time before they're able to be redirected. Somebody who has a fairly short-term memory, they might not need as long before they're able to be redirected and calm and we engage in another activity. Does that answer your question? Not really. It's kind of vague.
And sometimes, for her, sometimes she would take 5 minutes, fine, but sometimes 1 minute fine, but depends on how she is that day. You know, if she looks confused or spaced out, then sometimes it would take all day. So all day means quiet time, nothing.
Absolutely. So sometimes it takes 1 minute, 5 minutes. Other times it might take the whole day, and that is common. You know, and it could be if she's in a really, really heightened state, she's very agitated and very overstimulated, it might take the whole day or hours of the day before we're able to break that overstimulation. We can talk about some strategies today, but it really is going to be person specific.
Right.
And fluctuate. Good question. All right. So I have a few other examples using this model. So this one's resisting dressing. A lot of these triggers are going to be the same, so we can probably get these out pretty quickly. What do you think are triggers within the caregiver that brought on resisting dressing?
Too many tasks.
Rushing. Yeah.
Too many tasks.
Too many tasks. Too many tasks.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. Too many things to do. Asking them to do too many things. Not breaking down the task. Assuming that they can initiate and dress themselves as opposed to putting out just an undershirt, underwear, and socks. And then putting out a shirt and pants. And then putting out a belt and shoes. Right? Assuming that they're able to sequence all of those things on their own. Anything else within the caregiver? Okay, so a lot of these, again, are the same as resisting bathing, but too many choices. Or maybe an abstract question, what do you want to wear today? Right? That's really open-ended and a challenging thing for people with dementia to answer. Also, us being stressed, rushing, providing too many steps. Again, changing the routine. So routine is very important for people with dementia. The more we can stick to a routine, the easier it's going to be for everybody. I know I say that and I lack routine in my own life, so I know it's not the easiest thing to do. How about person with dementia? What's going on within them that might trigger resisting dressing? Yeah.
Well, I have a problem with my husband. He doesn't remember a lot of his clothing.
Yes.
So we go through this, that's not my shirt, yes it is your shirt. When did I get that shirt?
Right.
So and so bought you that shirt. A few Christmases ago, no, that's not my shirt, so.
Okay,
we
that's
go
a
through
really
that.
good
So I'll
point.
go get another shirt. It's too small, it's too big. So
Yeah.
sometimes I just have to step out the room
Great.
and come back again.
Perfect. That's a perfect strategy. I call that a temporary timeout, right? It gives us a moment to walk away. We take a deep breath. We come back in and we try it again. I think that's great. So this situation is resisting dressing because he doesn't think it's his clothing.
Yes.
So he's telling you, that's not my shirt. Nope, that's not my shirt either. And as much as we can try to reason with him and rationalize and explain, it's not going to make a difference. Because in his mind, that is not his shirt. Great example. So he truthfully does not think that it's his shirt. So I think the strategy that you use to go back in, pull a different shirt, that's fantastic. There's nothing that we're going to do to convince him that it really is his shirt. So we're either going to acknowledge him and say, you're right, it's not your shirt, but we're going to put it on today anyway. And if that works, great. If not, we're going to say, you're right, that's not your shirt, let's get a different one. Which is exactly what you're doing. That's perfect. And if you try that a couple times and it doesn't work, you walk away, you take a deep breath, you come back in a few minutes, and maybe you try a slightly different tone. You try another outfit. You try phrasing it in a slightly different way and see if that's effective. Great. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Anything else within the person with dementia? All right. So same sort of thing. It could be that the person's sensitive to different textures. Again, most people with dementia would have difficulty being able to express that if that were an issue. Unable to perform these complex tasks, especially the buttoning and the zippering. Invasion of personal space, again, same sort of thing as bathing. Increased sensitivity, oh, I have water pressure. Again, that's bathing, not dressing. Fearful, tired, insecure, anxious, and confused about what they're supposed to do. Those are all possible triggers to resisting dressing. How about the environment? What could be happening within the environment?
Too hot.
Too hot, absolutely. Or too cold. As we get older, our skin gets thinner. That's not just dementia, that's just aging. As our skin gets thinner, what happens? The heat escapes our body, right? So a lot of times in nursing homes, whether it's people with dementia or people without dementia, you see a lot of people wrapped in blankets even though it's really warm in there. That's because their skin is thin. They're losing more heat from their body, so they really are colder. So absolutely people are sensitive to the temperature in the room. So whatever we think is comfortable, make it a little bit warmer, give it maybe one more layer, and that's probably comfortable for them. Great, so definitely too hot or too cold could be a factor. What else might be going on in the environment?
Well, the environment could be the clothes themselves.
Absolutely.
And then, then one time he said, they hurt.
There
And
you
I'm
go.
like, So I went out that day and got him the same kind of pants in a bigger size.
There you go. Perfect. So his pants were too tight. He couldn't express that until one day he had a moment where he could say they hurt. And then that clued her in to say, oh, the pants are uncomfortable. That's why he's constantly taking them off.
Well,
That's
it may or may
perfect.
not be,
Yeah.
but it was
I
worth
think
the
that's
try.
absolutely that's worth a try, and I think that's a really good point. A lot of what we do throughout this process, it's trial and error. We make educated guesses about what the triggers are, and then we implement strategies to try to address what our best guess is. So that's exactly what you did. That's perfect. Other things in the environment for dressing, clutter, right? Having an environment that's really cluttered, or a closet that has a whole lot of stuff in it, it's going to be really hard to promote something like dressing because it makes it complex. Okay. Also, poor lighting. Exactly what you said. That it's not easy to see, not easy to find. Any questions about this? All right. I have a slide here about difficulty brushing teeth. Do you want me to go through these three again, or do you want me to just kind of put them all up here? Just put them up? Okay. All right. So we're going to go through, instead of going through this whole process again, because I want to make sure we have plenty of time for you to try this. So difficulty brushing teeth, you have this in your packet. These are some examples. Okay. So I would now like for you to take your worksheet, and it says identify the triggers or causes. So I want you to think about your family member or the person you're caring for with dementia, and I want you to think about what are the triggers using that model. So what are triggers within the person with dementia? What are triggers from the caregiver end of things? And what are triggers within the physical environment that are contributing to the behavior that you identified? Does everyone know what they're doing? Anyone is having difficulty thinking about what the triggers might be, one question I love to ask is there ever a time when this behavior does not happen? If the answer to that is yes, then I want to know what is the difference between when it does happen and when it does not. Is it time of day? Is it the people who were there? Is it what we said or how we said it? Is it the physical environment? That's going to really give us a big clue about what the triggers are. And for anyone who maybe isn't experiencing a behavioral concern right now, this can also apply to safety concerns as well. That helps. All right, if you're still working, please continue to work. But for those of you who have already identified some triggers, would anyone feel comfortable sharing? So if you could give us the behavior and then a couple of the triggers. Yeah, go ahead.
Telling my mom what to do something. And then coupled with that, assuming she can do it, and then putting added pressure on her, waiting for her to do it.
Absolutely. So do you have an example of what one of those things might be? Like telling her to, is it get dressed or?
Well, right now, we're trying to get her to drink more water.
Okay.
To stay hydrated.
Absolutely.
And
That's a good example.
We're telling her, we're not sure how much she's drinking, but it's not big.
Okay. So trying to get her to drink more water. She's not necessarily drinking more water. And some of the triggers. So there's triggers that are happening within her, definitely. And then there's probably triggers within the environment and possibly in the way that we're communicating.
She said she feels bloated.
She feels bloated. Okay,
She can't drink that much.
Okay, so she's not liking drinking because it's making her feel uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
What else might be going on? Any thoughts? Did you guys come up? Did you guys think of anything that might be happening within the environment?
I think the only environment would be the fact that we're aggravating her. Because when I'm there, she's eating dinner with me, I put the glass in front of her and I say, you still have to finish that. And then she tries to take it to the sink to dump it out.
Okay.
And I say, no, you have to finish that. And then she makes a face and she winds up drinking it.
Okay. Okay, so she does end up drinking it, but
Yes.
she's a little irritated in the process, maybe
Right.
because of the communication strategies. Were you going to say
I
something?
was gonna say a lot of people don't like just plain water, like they would
Right.
want something sweet or
Yeah.
Right.
tea or
Mix it with
something.
Gatorade.
Right. Okay, that's great. So mixing it, and again, that's something where I usually say, make sure it's okay with the doctor that they have sugary drinks. But I would rather, water down a sugary drink than have them not drink anything at all. So that's another one where I try to say, like, let's work as a healthcare team to figure out what's the best case scenario here, or what's a good compromise. So I think that's a really good point. For me, and yeah, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, when we were having the same trouble, I started using a smaller glass.
I do have a small 4-ounce glass.
Yeah.
And I started this week giving her flavored water.
Okay.
She said, what's that? I said, oh, it's got has lime in it. Oh, I don't think I'm going to like it. And when she didn't see it, I put it in her glass with the water and she drank the whole thing.
Okay, that's great. So sometimes doing something out of sight, right? Sometimes making it less of a big deal. The more we draw attention to something, we oftentimes see an increase in resistance. So figuring out a way to make it casual. A lot of times I try to make it as social as possible. I'll say cheers. And then I drink a glass of water, they drink a glass of water. Cheers again, even if it's just a sip. I might do cheers 100 times. If it means that they're going to drink the whole glass of water without escalating resistance and we make it a social activity, then I'm going to do it 100 times. So that can work with food, it can work potentially with medication, it can work with drinking. Again, it's not going to work 100% of the time, but sometimes it might. Were you going to say something else?
Also, like watering fruits and vegetables.
Watery fruits and
Like-
vegetables,
like
absolutely.
Lots of lettuce.
Yeah. So figuring out different foods that have high volumes of hydration, absolutely. So, I'm kind of going to strategies, but if we think about the different triggers, could be the taste. Water is boring, not really liking water. Feeling as though all the attention's on her. So she's feeling, I call it a loss of sense of control. When everyone's looking at us and telling us what to do, and then they get a little upset, overwhelmed, defensive, I call it a loss of sense of control. So that's what I'm sensing in this situation is everyone's giving her cues and trying to tell her to drink water, and then she's getting kind of frustrated because she doesn't feel like she has control over the situation anymore. So that's where I use something like, here's your glass, cheers, because then it's we're doing it together. I'm not telling you to do it. It's a social environment. Anybody else have ideas about what might trigger resisting drinking water? No. You guys definitely hit on a lot. I think glass size is a common trigger, so not in this scenario, but definitely can be a factor. Even just having the item in the environment. So again, you guys you have the glass on the table, but sometimes people might put the expectation on their family member that they're going to go to the refrigerator and get out a glass of water. That might be an expectation that's too high. So we're putting this pressure on the person that they have to initiate the task on their own, and maybe that's not realistic. So maybe it needs to be in their environment, in their visual field. Great, yeah.
I don't know if it would be the same situation in dementia, but there are some people that when they know that they have to drink water, then they know they have to go to the bathroom more often, and if they have issues with going to the bathroom, or if they're in a wheelchair or don't have one leg from the diabetes situation where they had a leg removed and then just transferring to them, it's like I had a personal experience with a mother-in-law that she stopped drinking because she didn't want to have to go to the bathroom so often.
That is a really good point. I will say it's maybe not as common in people with dementia compared to people without dementia, but it's still a factor. Absolutely. So the idea that people don't want to drink because it means they have to go to the bathroom, and they know that going to the bathroom is a production for one reason or another. So that could absolutely be a factor. Thank you for sharing that. That's important. Okay. So right now we're trying to figure out the why. And we already came up with a few good strategies, which is great, but right now the focus is on why is this happening? So who else has a behavior and some triggers that they're willing to share? Let's do one more. Does anyone have anything associated with sleeping or with bathing? Bathing? I might, just because you guys shared, I might pick on somebody else. Were you going to share one?
Yeah, but I've been participating a lot too.
Anybody else willing to participate? I don't want to pick on anyone if you really don't want to share. Okay, that's fine. We can go back to you guys. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was teeth brushing is but it's become more of an issue since my husband moved into a care facility.
Okay.
And I think that's partly because the structure disappeared. They're getting to him whenever they can, so there is no routine about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, then the gums get irritated because they haven't been brushed. So I've actually, this was helping a lot because I was thinking maybe I should be getting him Sensodyne instead of some other tooth.
That's an interesting point.
Maybe rinsing for a few days to try to get the sensitivity down. But he's not going to be able to initiate. And then when I try to do it, he clamps his mouth shut, and that's partly he doesn't understand.
Absolutely.
He doesn't know what it means to say open your mouth.
Right. That is probably one of the most common challenges I hear when it comes to oral hygiene is when I try to brush their teeth, they bite down, right? It's almost a sensory reaction. If we don't fully understand what's happening and there's something in our mouth, a lot of times our reaction is just to bite down on it. So it's not an easy scenario to deal with. Sometimes we can kind of work around, even if their teeth are clenched, trying to work around the outside at least. But this is a very challenging one. So you absolutely hit on a bunch of triggers. So triggers that are happening within the caregiver. The caregivers aren't initiating for him. They're not implementing a regular routine around oral hygiene, which is making it really tough. And then his internal factors, so now his gums are very irritated from not brushing regularly. That is probably an uncomfortable experience. Absolutely. And then also just where he's at in terms of his cognitive level, his response is sensory oriented in nature, meaning he's going to bite down when he feels the toothbrush in his mouth. Okay. And then any environmental triggers?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't.
Do you think that the toothbrush and the toothpaste are on the sink?
Oh, yeah, they're there.
Okay, okay. So they're within visual field.
And
So-
I went out and got one of these extra soft toothbrushes.
Okay,
But I'm even thinking, aren't there some things that like a little sponge or something on a stick?
absolutely. Yes. So talking about what are other types of options for brushing. So they definitely make soft toothbrushes. They make sponges. Typically we use a sponge to wet someone's mouth, or, you know, for those clients who are really, really dehydrated, putting a wet little sponge on a stick in their mouth, they might suck on that. But yeah, that might be a possible
Be
strategy
softer.
as well. Absolutely, absolutely. Good. Yeah,
I have a behavior, it's not an ADL,
that's okay.
but my wife has this thing where she'll take off. She'll open the door, put her coat on, open the door, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah.
And the first time it happened, I was taking a nap,
Okay.
and I don't take a nap anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
But like the last time it happened,
Yeah.
she had taken a nap. She got up from the nap, and she was agitated. She put on her jacket. I'm getting out of here.
Okay.
Now the only thing I can do is grab her by the throat and tie her to the pole in the basement. I can't do that, so I follow her. I get in the car and follow her, and then I
Okay.
try to get a hold of my son,
Okay.
because he seems to be able to talk her down, because it's like I'll ride next to her and it's like, I don't trust you, I'm not getting in the car, leave me the F alone,
Right.
all
Right.
this stuff.
Right.
And so the last time I got her in the car with the promise that I would take her to her son's, which I
Right.
did. And I picked her up the next morning.
Okay.
And I brought her home, she had no recollection of it.
Yeah.
And she was great, it was wonderful for 2 hours, and then it was like a light switch. I'm
Right
getting
back.
out of here.
Okay. Okay.
Same thing.
So this is a situation, so this triadic model that we're using applies to all dementia-related behaviors. So this model could absolutely apply to this scenario as well. So when I'm thinking about a behavior like this, the first thing I want to do is take a step back, spend some significant time and figure out all of these different areas. So, you know, what is the pattern? Is there ever a time where it's not happening? Are there certain times where it happens more often? Are there ever days where it doesn't happen, and what's different about those days? So I don't know that we'll get to every single trigger right now, but I think you and I should definitely talk in more detail about this, because we might be able to pinpoint some things. So the goal in going through this process is we're hopefully going to come up with some triggers so that we can decrease the frequency of the behavior. However, sometimes we go through this process and it's really, really hard to come up with what the trigger is. So in those scenarios, we have to come up with strategies, which we're going to talk about now. Strategies that both decrease the trigger, but also strategies for what to do when the behavior happens. So that's kind of where you're at right now. It's figuring out when this happens, we have to figure out what to do about it, because it's a huge safety concern for her to just be out on her own, right? So you figured out some strategies in terms of changing the caregiver to be your son, because that seems to decrease her agitation or resistance. But then I am also hoping that through this process, we might also be able to figure out why is it happening in the first place, so that we can try to address that need and decrease it from happening. Does that make sense?
My thought is, there's a lot of the time that she doesn't think on me, okay?
Yeah.
And there's been some times where it's like I've dropped her off at my sister-in-law, and
Right.
she'll tell my sister-in-law that man brought me down here.
Right, right.
And that van.
Right.
And so, like, you know, it tells me when she says, I don't trust you,
Right.
when I'm riding next to her, that I'm somebody else.
Exactly.
And she's afraid.
Right? Absolutely. So there's a big internal factor of fear. You know, I don't know who this person is. I'm confused about what's happening. I'm very fearful of the current situation. And so therefore we have these behaviors of, I have to get out of here. I have to get away from this strange man who I don't know.
And a lot of times too, she'll you know, she'll come downstairs and with a backpack and she'll go, I'm gonna go home, you know. So
Right,
she
right.
sees the house sometimes as not being her house.
My mother does
Absolutely.
that every 3 days.
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah.
is packed up, and I have to unpack
Bless
everything
you.
every 3 days.
Right.
Everything in the house is packed up in boxes,
Right.
put in the living
I'm
room, and I
ready to
have to
go
unpack
home.
it at night.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I know these are very challenging situations, and I would be happy to talk in more detail about any of these scenarios because I think we can use the same model to address it. But just for time's sake, I'm going to move on to some of the strategies just so we can get through the ADL portion. But I would be happy to speak with either of you about any more of these situations as well. Is that okay? But thank you for bringing that up because I think that's a good point. This triadic model applies to, we're focusing on ADLs, but it applies to any behavioral concern that you're experiencing. It's just that the process to figure out the triggers, we usually spend a really long time on because it's not as straightforward. Okay, so now that we have the triggers, now we want to figure out the strategies. So we know what the behavior is. Now we have a better sense of why this behavior is happening. Now we need to know what to do about it. So this is where we're going to hit on a lot of the same types of points that I talked about the last time I was here. So we're going to talk a lot about activity engagement, adapting tasks, and communication style to promote engagement in a task. Our strategies should directly connect to what we determined to be the triggers. So if we know a trigger is the temperature in the room, our strategy should be to increase the temperature in the room. If we know that a trigger was a feeling of insecurity or lack of privacy, our strategy should be something to make that person feel as though they have their privacy. You know, whether it's closing the door, covering them with a towel, whatever we need to do to bring that sense of security and privacy back. So I'm going to give you very general ideas right now. I'm probably going to move through this pretty quickly because, again, I think we should spend a little bit more time on the specific strategies that apply to the triggers that you identified. Everyone with me? Okay. All right, so some general strategies are reducing the complexity of the task. So we talked about this related to dressing, right? So we want to think about, instead of laying out every item for dressing, maybe we just lay out the undershirt, the underwear, and the socks. And then we wait. And then we lay out the shirt and the pants. And then we wait. And then we put out the shoes and the belt. Because otherwise, maybe they put the shoes on and try to get the pants over the shoes. Or they're trying to put the undershirt over their regular shirt. Something like that. So if we can break it down for them, we're going to make that task easier. We also want to reduce the number of steps, changing the size, material, weight, color of the objects. So, you know, your example of pants were too tight. Or I have a lot of clients who really don't like to wear jeans anymore. They used to be comfortable, now they're like, oh, these really aren't that comfy with the zipper and the button, and they'd prefer to just wear something more casual, sweatpants, stretchy pants. That's an example of relaxing the rules. I'm okay with that if it makes them comfortable. Again, we're always thinking about changing the purpose to the process. ADLs, it's a little bit different because at the end of the day, we know the person has to get dressed before they leave the house. So we can't say, oh, it's okay for you to be naked and go out, right? We have to accomplish that task. So that's where we want to say something like, I'm okay with you wearing things that don't match. If it means that we can decrease the resistance, that's when we relax the rules. That's when we say the purpose is more activity. Okay. Setting up the activity in advance would be ideal as well. Strategies to simplify the environment. So we want to reduce clutter and visual distraction. So having too many items in the physical environment is going to distract from what's necessary. If we have a closet that has a whole lot of items in it, lots of different shirts and pants, it's going to be really hard for the person to engage. If we have a shower that has lots of different products in it, it's going to be hard for the person with dementia to know which products are the most appropriate. We also want to think about lighting. So providing lighting that is too bright or too dim could potentially trigger resistance or any sort of behavior. So dim lighting could be scary, could promote fear. I had one client who refused to get in the shower because the shower was too dark. So we just had to add extra lighting in the shower and make it not feel so scary. So lighting could absolutely be a factor and then also be a strategy. Removing dangerous items. I had a client one time who was using toilet bowl cleaner as shampoo. That is obviously a pretty significant safety concern. It was something as simple as the toilet bowl cleaner was being stored in the shower stall. So the person with dementia was engaging with the items in their environment. By removing it from the shower stall and securing it under the sink, the child lock, no longer an issue. So we want to think about what is in that person's visual field, what is in their environment to promote this task. We only want to put the items that are needed and provide it within the person's visual field. So I have a couple pictures now, some examples. Okay, so neither of these is a perfect scenario, but which of these sinks would be the better option? Right, the bottom one. Why?
Everything's contained in baskets.
A little bit more organized, a little less cluttered, right?
Get to the sink.
You can still get to the sink, right? This one, where is the sink even, right? It's very confusing. There's a lot going on. This is actually one of my clients' sinks. I was like, can I take a picture of this? This is great. So this is in their home. Toothbrush, toothpaste, this is lotion. For this client, this works. He doesn't accidentally put the lotion on the toothbrush or anything like that. For other clients, we might take the lotion away and just have this. For him, this works. It's a clean sink. The only items out there are the toothpaste and the toothbrush. Once he sees it, he can initiate the task. Again, that's not going to work for every single person, but this is one way that we can adapt the environment to promote engagement. Also, if we can adapt the environment, we may decrease resistance because we don't have to now give a verbal cue that says, time to brush your teeth. People are more resistant to the verbal cues or instructions than they are to an environmental cue. So if we can set the environment up to promote the task, we might see a decrease in resistance. Yeah, did you have a question?
The adhesive, the denture adhesive, I happened to be right there, so I said, okay, now you brush your teeth with the toothpaste. But I don't know if this happens when I'm not there. At that point, after that happened, I put the adhesive somewhere else, and then you couldn't find it, so I'm not sure how to deal with that if I see it happen again.
So he's hiding the adhesive, is that what you said? I'm sorry.
I put it away.
You put it away, okay. But you're not sure if he's cleaning them when you're not.
Yes.
So that's a good question. You know, there's truthfully no way for us to really know if he's doing it unless we have a camera. There's no way for us to know if he's doing it when you're not there to observe. My guess is that he probably does need a cue to initiate the task. So if he does it when you ask him to do it, if he doesn't resist doing it, I say that's okay. He needs a verbal cue for initiation, that's fine with me. You know, if it might add to your plate a little bit, but if you just have to give him that one verbal cue every evening for him to initiate that task, that's a perfect strategy. That's great. You know, the ideal scenario is that we can adapt the environment to promote someone's independence, but that's not always a realistic goal. And sometimes it's less stressful for us if we know we give them the cue and we know it happened, than to wonder, ooh, did it happen, did it not? Okay. So this is the same client. This is to cue him to wash his face and use deodorant. Again, for him it works. He puts the deodorant on appropriately. He washes his face. In another scenario, I might recommend, again, if it works for him, I'm not going to change it. But for somebody else, I might say, okay, we're going to have the washcloth with soap, and then we're going to put the deodorant on the other side of the sink. Right, so just trying to set it up so that things don't accidentally get mixed up. Another client's closet. This is a pretty good example of a closet. It's not overly cluttered. It might still be a little too much, a few too many choices. So this might be something where the wife or the husband, the wife in this case, might pull a shirt, pull out pants from the drawer, and just stick. He has a, can't see it here, but there's a chair over here for dressing. So she might just pull out a shirt and a pair of pants and put that on his chair to cue him. But this is a pretty good example of a closet, not extremely overwhelming. A few examples of a bathroom. So this was a predetermined safety picture. So they identified a few different hazards, being the shoes, the rug that's non-skid, this drawer open. A lot of times people with dementia, if they see a drawer open, they'll almost use it as a grab bar, which is a safety concern, so we want to make sure they're closed. A little bit of clutter going on over here. So this is just a safer setup for someone with dementia. It's also easier to understand what they're supposed to do because they're not distracted by all of this other stuff in the environment. Yeah.
Is leaving drawers open a symptom of dementia?
Rummaging and hoarding are common dementia-related behaviors, which could then lead to leaving drawers open. But I wouldn't say that leaving the drawers open is a symptom of dementia, but rather a result of rummaging, typically. Does that answer your question? So you can see this scenario has a few safety options. So typically a grab bar in this place is a good option because people with dementia, even though I'm happy with the handles, people with dementia are more likely to reach in front of them and pull up than they are to push down from what's behind them. So a grab bar in this location is going to be probably more helpful to help someone stand up because they're going to be more likely to try to pull up than they are to push down. Okay. The one thing I do like about this is that it's a high contrast mat versus kind of white on beige on white. There's not a lot of contrast. So if it were me, I would like to see a brightly colored non-skid bath mat so that the person with dementia doesn't accidentally slip on a wet tiled floor. So how might we set up this room if resistance to bathing is an issue because of, say, temperature or possibly, let's go temperature. How might we set this room up to decrease resistance to bathing?
You could preheat it with a space heater and
Absolutely.
then get it out of the way.
Absolutely.
Like turning on water.
Great. So as long as it's safe, a lot of people use something like a small space heater. Again, we absolutely don't want it to be mixed with water or anything like that. So I think the great way to do this is to place it in the bathroom for a while beforehand, get it nice and warm, then remove it once the bathroom started. You could also, I know it's not the most environmentally friendly, but we're just talking about behaviors. We might turn the water on far in advance, turn it up, get the room nice and warm and steamy, right? So it should feel kind of like a sauna. The warmer it is, the more we're going to see a decrease in resistance. Also for me, the lighting in here isn't great. So again, you can see the shower is a little bit darker than the rest of the room. So that might be a factor in the resistance. Okay. These are just a few other examples of safety products. Yeah.
That one device that's kind of straddling over the rim of the tub.
Oh, this one?
Is that available in like a medical?
It's called a tub bar.
Tub bar.
Absolutely. So that's more common for people who like to take baths. I don't typically recommend taking a bath only because of the difficulty getting up, but that's typically what a tub bar would be used for, is to be able to lift yourself up after you get a bath. But it could be used for this scenario as well. Yeah, good question. Yeah.
I just want to say, you can also buy light fixtures that are in the ceiling of your bathroom that have heating units in it. if
Perfect.
you've got, you know, not too much of a financial burden where
Right.
you probably need an electrician to rework a switch on the wall so that it's got
Yeah.
a switch for the light, a switch for the heating unit,
That is a,
and it's out of the way, and, yeah.
that's great to know.
I
'Cause
have
a lot
one in
of
my bathroom.
Perfect. Oh, that's great. So, heating units that could be installed by an electrician in the bathroom. So, a lot of memory care communities have something like that, like a heat lamp in the ceiling. But that could be something that you could add in your home. Might be a cost, but might be something that's worth it. Okay. Great. I'm going to talk a little bit about communicating effectively. But are there any questions about the impact that environment can have on behaviors and on decreasing behaviors? No. Okay. I know I'm cramming a lot into a short period of time. Okay. Communicating effectively. So I cannot emphasize enough the power of communication. If we can alter the way that we're framing things, the way that we're approaching a scenario, we might see a significant decrease in behaviors. So again, resistance is often first triggered by the way that we communicate the task. So the word itself might be a trigger. So time to use the bathroom. That word bathroom could be the trigger. So again, I would prefer a strategy that's something like, let's go for a walk. Let's stretch our legs. For me, with a lot of my clients, I might say something like, I'd love to look at your home. That's if they feel that they are home and they know it's their home. I would love to check out your dining room. Let's go over here. I want to look at this picture on your wall. Whatever it is that's going to get us to go for a walk. And then we conveniently end up in this nice, warm, steamy bathroom. And then we start to go through the motions of bathing. So if at all possible, I highly recommend removing as much of your verbal communication as possible and just going through what I would call demonstration or tactile cueing or visual cueing. So I have been able to do showers with people without ever saying the word shower, without ever saying the word clean. We end up in the bathroom, just start to remove the layers because it's nice and hot in there. Oh, it's kind of hot in here. We should probably take your shirt off. And then slowly we can get the person into the bathroom. Again, I know that this is not going to be effective for every single person, but just something I want to emphasize because of how many clients I have who run into this type of issue. Also, we want to think about, again, not providing abstract questions. We want to use statements. Don't give more than 2 choices. So if we think about something like mealtime or dressing, if we're going to give choices, I would just give 2, and I would try to give a visual choice. So instead of saying, do you want the red shirt or the blue shirt, I would show them the red shirt and show them the blue shirt. At mealtime, I wouldn't say, do you want a salad or do you want pasta? I would show them a salad and show them pasta. It's going to be easier for them to understand a visual cue than a verbal cue. Also, I always want to acknowledge what my family member or the person with dementia is saying. So a lot of times behaviors escalate because we don't acknowledge their belief of what is true. So I am not going to argue with the person with dementia. I'm not going to try to rationalize or explain the situation. I'm going to acknowledge what they said. And if acknowledging what they said is challenging for you, then acknowledge the emotion behind what they're saying, because that's usually easier. And then from there, we can reassure them and redirect them. So if they say something like, I don't want to get a shower, my reaction would be, you don't want to get a shower. I can understand that that's scary for you, or I would be frustrated too. Let's go take a walk. Let's look at this magazine. Let's distract from the current situation. So if someone tells me a statement that has emotion behind it, I acknowledge the emotion. I reassure them that I understand what they're saying or that everything's going to be okay. And then I try to redirect them into another activity before I try bathing or something like that again. Okay. Yeah.
Such a little bit about emotions, because,
Yeah.
and I know this gentleman talked about his wife being angry. My mother fights with us, and gets very indignant.
Yeah.
And it seems like emotion is the one thing that's not affected by dementia. It's like it's alive and well.
So emotion, I would say those kind of, the fighting, whether it's verbal aggression or physical aggression, if you will, that would be what I would consider a dementia-related behavior. And same thing, it's being triggered by one of these areas, just like another behavior like resistance. So anger, aggression, what is it that that person is feeling? Are they afraid? Are they in pain? Are they confused? Did I say something that brought on that aggression? So yes, it's possible for people to have those behaviors. It's actually quite common, but I would still say that there's a trigger. One of my rules is you can never say the behavior happened because of dementia. Because not everyone with dementia has behaviors, and not everyone with behaviors has the same one, and it's not all triggered by the same thing. It's the person with dementia interacting with the people and with their environment, the people in their environment and their environment. That together causes these behaviors. So then it's our job to figure out what it is that's bringing it on. Okay. Couple more things here, and then I want to give you guys time to come up with strategies for yourself. So, a couple more things about communicating effectively. We've talked about this, I think, the last time as well. So using words of encouragement. If I know that I have a client who says, that's terrific all the time, then I'm going to use the same type of language. Isn't this terrific? The food tastes terrific, whatever it is. Also, I always want to tell people that they're helping me or thank them. If they weren't resistant, for example, thank you so much for your help. I really appreciate you helping me. Or if I know that the person used to be a teacher, then I might say things like, you taught me so much today. I learned so much. So any sort of encouragement I can provide that's going to capitalize on what was important to them, something that I'm going to use. We want to give enough time for someone with dementia to respond to us. So again, thinking about how they can become really overstimulated. Verbal cues are the hardest to process and the ones that trigger resistance the most. So if we can use another type of cue, which are on this slide, such as a demonstration. I had a client one time who was wearing her winter coat and it was really hot outside, and they needed to go to a doctor's appointment. The husband's like, I don't want her to pass out, it's really hot. Trying to say to her, it's hot outside and you need to take your coat off. Do you think that worked?
No.
How about just saying to her, it's time to take your coat off? Didn't work. So what I did is I put on a coat, came up to her, I was like, whew, it's kind of warm in here. I think I'm going to take my coat off. So I'm demonstrating for her what I want her to do. That was enough to get her to do the same thing. Or I'm going to take my coat off. Let me help you with yours. So trying to frame it in a way that's using demonstration or a visual cue is going to be more effective than verbal. All right. Couple general considerations. I've talked about most of these. Routine is really important. Not rushing. I know that can be really tough, especially when we have appointments to get to, but the more we rush someone, the longer it's going to take. Relaxing the rules, I've talked about quite a few times, and then enhancing comfort. So just thinking about what is going to make my family member or the person I'm caring for more comfortable, not in pain. Relaxing the rules might also be maybe a shower isn't necessary. Maybe a sponge bath is okay. Is it still meeting the same needs? Then I'm okay with it, right? So we might have to adapt our expectations. Okay. Any questions? I know I went through strategies kind of quickly. All right, so I would like for you to now take your worksheet, and on the back, I want you to think about any sort of strategies that you can come up with that are going to connect to the triggers that you identified. So think about why the behavior is happening, and then try to think about a strategy that's going to reduce that behavior or that trigger. In addition to strategies to reduce the trigger, I would also love for you to come up with strategies for how to handle the behavior when it does occur. Okay?
Here's the last few words.
Oh, sure. So I also want you to think about strategies for how to handle the behavior when it does occur. Any questions about what you're doing right now? And you can work in groups if you want to. You can talk to each other. And again, if behaviors aren't necessarily a concern that you're encountering, you can think about strategies to make the different activities safer. That's always a good thing to brainstorm for the future.
I have a general question.
Yeah,
Do you post
absolutely.
this PowerPoint after the session, or do you?
I think the video itself is posted. Is it next week?
We're recording all of this and we're gonna post the video, but we
But
can
I can-
also send the
Oh,
PowerPoint. If
yeah.
you send it to me, I
Yeah.
can send it to everybody.
Perfect.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
know
Yes,
to have
yes.
it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That works for me.
I didn't realize this was being recorded.
It is, but only Rachel is being
Filmed.
filmed. I made the announcement last time and I did forget to
Yeah.
announce it this time.
I think I'm the only one in the shot, and then I just have been repeating. The last time I don't think it picked up the voices of the people who were sitting here, so I've been repeating the questions from the audience. All right, if you're still working, please feel free to continue working, but I would love to take this time to make sure we have a chance to share strategies with each other. And this is the part where I really want to make sure that you all are leaving with something that is going to help you. So is anyone willing to either share a strategy that they came up with or just ask the group for help, for ideas?
We're having trouble with her bills, which I'm trying to pay them, or my sister is, with anyone who's there, to pay the bills. But she's hiding them now from us.
Okay. Okay.
So I have to
Hiding
get to the
bills.
mailbox first.
Okay.
You'll get the bills, give her the junk, and I take the bills home with me.
Okay. Perfect.
But we can't always do that, so anybody have any ideas out there for how to get the bills from her?
Okay,
Do you
so
have power of attorney?
I have for some things.
Could you get her address changed on her bills?
He did, yeah.
Well, one of them
So
I
they
did.
come to you?
I did, long story, but yes, I did for one, but I was just thinking maybe have the post office mail the bills to your house or my house. Then she'll be wondering, where's all my bills?
So, who has any ideas for that? If she says something like, "Where are my bills?"
I have a PO box. My mother has a PO box, and she doesn't drive anymore. So all of her bills, I take them. Of course, when I bring them home, then she finds them, and they're my bills, her bills. All of our things are late now. But what I do, I put them in a bag now, and I have to carry everything to work. But at least I have a control over it because they're all coming to the PO box.
Right.
So I made sure even the utility bills not go to the PO box. And then the little stuff that comes in the mailbox at home, like the junk mail, she still thinks that's important. So she's content with that little bit of paper.
Absolutely. And were you going to add to that as well?
What about paying online, where the bill can come to you electronically in your email?
She doesn't have that set up. We have to get that set up.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
That's what we did for my father, like we did, the bills come electronic to our email, right, online. And we just pay that.
That's good, thank you.
And you can also get it so that the bills come to your house. This is what I did. The bills still come to the house, but they're being automatically paid. So they're still the bills,
Yeah.
but you don't pay them.
So she puts them in the china closet, we can't find them.
Doesn't matter.
That's right, no problem. How do they get automatically paid then? What do they-
You set up automatic
Set up
bill pay
automatic
through
bill
your,
And then have
through
them
your
still
checking
send it
account.
down.
But you can ask them to still send you the paper bill.
Right. That's a good idea.
And then I think the other factor would be, if you did remove the bills, and if she is still asking about where the bills are, then we need a communication technique, right? And that's when I would say something like acknowledge, reassure, redirect. So, oh yeah, I'll look into the bills. I know you're wondering where the bills are. I'm going to look into that for you. In the meantime, can you help me open this mail? Right? So we're not allowing that concern to escalate. We're acknowledging that she has a concern about where the bills are. We're reassuring her that we're going to look into it. And then we're redirecting her into another task. So that would be a situation where if she is asking, that's how I would respond to that, to try to de-escalate the situation.
Sure.
Great. All right. Anyone else willing to share either a strategy or ask a question about what to do about a behavior? Yeah, you can.
Well, coming back to the toothbrushing.
Okay.
Based on the things you were saying.
Yes.
I always keep a toothbrush and toothpaste in my purse so I can take them in
Yeah.
to where he is and say, I'm gonna brush my teeth, will you check?
Perfect.
And then see if I can get him to brush his teeth and I will check him.
I think that's great. Or make it,
Or make it silly, that was the other thing. It's
Okay.
like, with the rincing, like, can you do this and do funny things with your mouth
Yeah.
and spit? And,
yeah.
and
I love
get him
that
to
idea.
mimic that.
Right. I think that's a great idea. Anything that you could do that would make that social. That's a great example of if you're willing to do it with him, you both stand next to each other at the mirror and you both brush your teeth. You are demonstrating for him what it is that you want to do with the mouthwash. I think that's a great idea. So that would be a way to make that situation more social where we're using cues that aren't verbal cues. I think that's wonderful. Great. Any other strategies, or did you want to ask the group for any other ideas?
Yeah, I'll be happy if there are any other
Okay,
ideas.
does anyone else have any other ideas about the toothbrushing? So difficulty with brushing teeth because it's not necessarily a routine in the community, and he's biting down on the toothbrush. You can jump in.
Well, something that somebody shared with me, I don't know, I don't know that this will apply to everybody, but somebody told me that his wife wasn't brushing his teeth, and he tried an electric toothbrush and that worked.
That's great.
So,
That's a great idea. So electric toothbrush, you don't have to do as much of the scrubbing, right? It does a lot of the brushing for you. So you hit the button, it buzzes, and it does a lot of the work for you. So that might be a great option. Plus, it provides that sensory input, and that's not something that someone with dementia would want to bite down on because it provides too much vibration, right? So an electric toothbrush is a great example of how to adapt the task materials to possibly reduce a behavior or promote engagement.
I could see how that could fail too.
Right,
Because it
absolutely.
could be scary, but.
Right, or maybe
Yeah,
like
it worked in this
some
case,
people
so
it might like tickle your nose and it's uncomfortable because it's vibrating, but for the people where it works, it's worth trying.
Right.
I think that's great. Anybody else?
I have a question. What about a hearing aid? Does anybody have anything about hearing aids? She has 50% hearing loss in both ears, refuses to get a hearing aid.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any hearing aid issues, or you have a hearing aid that's working okay? I think if she had a hearing aid, I think she'd be at least 50% better than what she is. I don't think she hears everything, and then she gets mad when you say stuff because she didn't hear what you said.
Right, so she's
And she
frustrated because she
misinterprets
didn't
it.
hear. Yeah, so
Right.
this is a really challenging situation. Hearing aids, I have not found anyone who was resisting hearing aids before where we've been able to make it comfortable enough that they're now willing to wear them.
Right.
Hearing aids typically aren't the most comfortable thing for people with dementia, and again, we can't explain or rationalize why they're wearing them. So the immediate reaction, if there's the slightest bit of discomfort, is to get it out, right? That's what happens when pants are uncomfortable, when someone accidentally has an accident. The reaction is, get it off of me, get it out, right? So if hearing aids aren't comfortable, pop them out. If my pants are uncomfortable, get them off. That's just the reaction. They're reacting to being uncomfortable or in pain. So unfortunately, I have yet to identify one that has made someone really comfortable. And then I try to adapt the best I can to the situation that we have, which is, speaking louder if possible, if that would help her be able to hear.
I had the TV on 40.
Okay, yeah, and communicating. Signing, yes. Vicky's gonna say signing. So communicating with other means. So visual demonstration, visual cues, signage, those types of things. So trying to adapt. But I can understand how if she's hearing part of it and then she's getting aggravated because she's misinterpreting, that could be an issue. So that might have to be something where we have to figure out how to adapt our communication approach a bit. Yeah. All right. Any other last minute questions, examples of strategies before I talk about just a couple more things? No. Does everyone feel like they can walk away with something from today that will help them? Okay. And if not, I'll stick around for a few minutes afterwards. Okay, so I also want to talk about implementing the different strategies. I usually say, please try, if it doesn't have a negative effect, please try a strategy for at least a couple weeks before you write it off. Sometimes it might take a while before we see an impact, or it might be such a small impact that it's not noticeable at first. But I would say try it for a couple weeks before you write it off. Also, we want to know that all caregivers are aware. So if we have paid caregivers, or if we have some maybe rotating, sometimes the children help, sometimes the spouse helps. We want to know that everyone's on the same page and that we have a consistent approach, that we're using the same phrasing, that we're using the same techniques, environment, routine, because that's going to help be able to decrease that behavior. When everyone's on the same page, it usually works better. If a strategy really doesn't work, then go back to your list. So that's why on this page I had said, when you're listing strategies, list ones even if you don't think you're going to get around to it right away. Because then if you don't have a chance, if your first go-to strategies don't work, you go back to your list and you say, oh yeah, I forgot about that. This one might be worth a try now. So we want to think about, what other options you might have. Okay. All right. Any questions about anything? I know that was a lot of information in a short period of time. You guys were bearing with me, so I appreciate that. Any last minute questions? It's my grandmom and her sisters, my great aunts.